Maya's stomach gnawed at her ribs as she counted the crumpled bills for the third time, 99 cents. The fluorescent lights of the 7-Eleven buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across her hollow cheeks. She'd been surviving on gas station coffee and stale donuts for 3 days now. This can't be it, she thought, stuffing the pathetic collection of coins and wrinkled dollar bills back into her jacket pocket. 23 years old and this is what I have to show for it. The automatic doors whooshed open behind her, letting in a gust of October wind that cut right through her thin jacket. She pulled it tighter and stepped outside, her breath forming small clouds in the crisp night air. The parking lot was nearly empty except for a few pickup trucks and her beat-up Honda Civic, the last thing she owned that hadn't been repossessed or sold. That's when she saw it. A yellowed flyer fluttered against the windshield of her car, held in place by a wiper blade. Maya almost threw it away without looking, but something made her pause. The paper felt strange under her fingers, thick and rough, like parchment. Moonlight ceremony, pay what you can, find your destiny. The words were written in elaborate script that seemed to shimmer under the streetlights. At the bottom, an address she recognized, the old logging road that led into the Cascade foothills. And there, in smaller text, $1 minimum admission. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. $1. She had exactly $1.99 to her name. This had to be some kind of joke, or maybe a scam. But what did she have left to lose? Her apartment was gone. Her job at the marketing firm had ended 3 weeks ago when they downsized her entire department. Her parents were dead, her college friends had moved on to better things, and her credit cards were maxed out. She'd been sleeping in her car for the past week, washing her hair in McDonald's bathrooms and pretending she had somewhere to go. Find your destiny, the word seemed to pulse on the page. Maya looked around the empty parking lot, then back at the flyer. The rational part of her brain screamed warnings. Midnight ceremonies in the woods were exactly the kind of thing her mother had warned her about in all those cautionary tales. But the desperate part, the part that was tired of being hungry and cold and utterly alone, whispered something different. What if it's real? What if there's actually something out there that can help? 40 minutes later, Maya was driving up a winding dirt road she'd never noticed before, even though she'd lived in this town her entire life. Her headlights carved through the darkness between towering pine trees, and she had to grip the steering wheel tight to navigate the potholes and loose gravel. The road ended in a clearing where dozens of cars were parked at odd angles, expensive SUVs next to rusted pickups, sleek sedans beside dented minivans. People were walking toward the tree line, their forms barely visible in the moonlight. Maya grabbed her purse, checked her meager collection of money one more time, and followed them. A path wound through the forest, lit by torches that crackled and hissed in the night breeze. The smell of pine sap and wood smoke filled her nostrils, along with something else, something wild and musky that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. The path opened into another clearing, this one much larger. At least 50 people stood in a rough circle around a massive bonfire. They all wore dark clothing and strange masks, some carved from wood, others made of leather or bone. The flames cast dancing shadows across their faces, making them look more like creatures than people. First time. Maya jumped. A figure in a hooded cloak stood beside her, seemingly having appeared out of nowhere. She couldn't see their face, but their voice was warm and oddly comforting. Yes. I saw the flyer. Excellent. That'll be $1. Maya's hand trembled as she pulled out a crumpled bill and placed it in the figure's outstretched palm. The moment the money left her fingers, she felt a strange tingling sensation, like static electricity running up her arm. Find an empty space in the circle, the figure said, gesturing toward the crowd. And Maya? She froze. She hadn't told them her name. Don't be afraid. Tonight, everything changes. Maya walked on unsteady legs toward the circle, her mind racing. How had they known her name? And why did their voice sound so familiar, like an echo of a dream she couldn't quite remember? She found a gap between a woman in a raven mask and a man whose face was hidden behind carved antlers. The moment she stepped into the circle, a hush fell over the crowd. Even the fire seemed to quiet, its flames settling into a steady, hypnotic dance. Then the chanting began. It started low, almost like humming, but gradually grew louder and more complex. The words weren't in English, they sounded ancient, primal, like something that might have been spoken when the world was young. Maya felt the sound in her bones, a vibration that seemed to sync with her heartbeat. The masked figures began to move, swaying in unison. Maya tried to copy their movements, feeling awkward and out of place among these strange people who clearly knew what they were doing. But as the chanting continued, she found herself falling into the rhythm naturally, as if her body remembered something her mind had forgotten. The fires suddenly roared higher, sending sparks shooting toward the star-filled sky. In the increased light, Maya could see that some of the masks weren't masks at all, they were faces, but changed somehow. Extended canines caught the firelight. Eyes reflected the flames with an unnatural golden glow. This isn't a costume party, she realized with growing horror. These people, they're not entirely people. She started to back away from the circle, but found her path blocked by a towering figure she hadn't noticed before. He wore a rough burlap sack over his head, with holes cut out for his eyes. Even through the crude disguise, she could see those eyes blazing with the same golden light she'd noticed in the others. "Don't run," he said, and his voice sent shivers through her entire body. It was deep and rough, like gravel mixed with honey. "You came here for a reason." "I don't know what this is," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible over the chanting. "I just needed help. I'm broke, I'm homeless, You're exactly where you need to be." The stranger reached up and pulled the burlap sack from his head. Maya's breath caught in her throat. He was the most striking man she'd ever seen, sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw darkened with stubble, and thick black hair that fell across his forehead. But it was his eyes that held her captive. They glowed like molten gold in the firelight, ancient and wild and completely inhuman. Ritual scars covered his temples and forehead, intricate patterns that seemed to move and shift in the dancing light. "What are you?" she breathed. He smiled, revealing teeth that were just a little too sharp. "The answer to your prayer." Before she could move, he pressed his palm against her forehead. His skin was burning hot, and where he touched her, she felt fire race through her veins. Words poured from his lips in that same ancient language, and each syllable seemed to brand itself into her soul. The world exploded into sensation. Every nerve ending in Maya's body screamed as something fundamental rewrote itself in her DNA. She could hear heartbeats, dozens of them, pounding in sync with her own. She could smell fear and excitement and something wild and predatory that made her mouth water. She tried to scream, but no sound came. The fire grew brighter and brighter until it was all she could see, all she could feel, consuming her from the inside out. Then darkness took her, and Maya Chen, broke, desperate, entirely human Maya Chen, ceased to exist. When she collapsed to the forest floor, something else began to wake up in her place. Chapter 2. Maya's consciousness returned slowly, like surfacing from the bottom of a deep lake. The first thing she noticed was the smell, cedar and wood smoke, leather and something distinctly masculine that made her stomach flutter in a way that had nothing to do with hunger. The second thing was the pain. Her forehead felt like someone had pressed a red-hot brand against it. She lifted her hand to touch the spot, and her fingers came away sticky with what looked like blood, though it shimmered strangely in the dim light filtering through unfamiliar windows. "Don't touch it. You'll make it worse." Maya's eyes snapped open fully, and she found herself staring up at exposed wooden beams. She was lying on a couch in what appeared to be a rustic cabin, all rough-hewn logs and stone, with a massive fireplace dominating one wall. Native American blankets and animal pelts hung from the walls, and the furniture looked handcrafted and expensive. She turned her head toward the voice and saw him. The stranger from the ceremony sat in a leather chair across from her, no longer wearing the burlap mask. In the soft morning light streaming through the windows, he was even more devastating than she'd remembered. Those golden eyes watched her with an intensity that made her feel like prey. "Where am I?" Maya struggled to sit up, and the movement sent another wave of fire through her skull. She pressed her palm against her forehead and gasped. My cabin. About 20 miles from where you collapsed last night. His voice was matter-of-fact, but there was something underneath it, a roughness that suggested he wasn't as calm as he appeared. How do you feel? Like someone tried to carve my brain out with a spoon. Maya swung her legs over the side of the couch and immediately regretted it as the room spun. What did you do to me? What needed to be done? He stood and moved to the fireplace, his back to her. Even at rest, he moved with a predatory grace that made every instinct she had scream danger. You were dying, Maya. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but you were wasting away. I gave you a chance at something more. By doing what, exactly? Because the last thing I remember is you putting your hand on my face and setting me on fire from the inside. Maya touched her forehead again, wincing at the fresh surge of pain. And why does this feel like someone carved something into my skin? He turned back to face her, and in his expression she saw something that made her blood run cold. Not cruelty, exactly, but a complete lack of apology for what he'd done. Because someone did carve something into your skin. My mark. A crescent moon that binds you to me. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. Binds me how? In every way that matters. He moved closer, and she caught that wild, musky scent again, the same one that had filled the forest clearing. Only now she realized it was coming from him. My name is Kai Blackwood. I'm the alpha of the Northern Pack, and as of last night, you belong to me. I belong to no one. Maya shot to her feet, swaying slightly but determined to face him standing up. I don't know what kind of sick cult thing you've got going on here, but I'm leaving. Right now. Kai tilted his head, and for a moment she saw something almost like sympathy cross his features. You can try. Maya stared at him for a long moment, waiting for him to elaborate. When he didn't, she stalked toward what she assumed was the front door. Her hand was on the handle when he spoke again. I wouldn't go more than 100 yards if I were you. Unless you enjoy pain. Maya yanked the door open and stepped outside into crisp mountain air. The cabin sat in a small clearing surrounded by towering pines, with a narrow dirt road disappearing into the forest. Her Honda was nowhere to be seen. She started walking. For the first 50 steps, she felt fine, better than fine, actually. The morning air seemed sharper, more alive somehow. She could hear birds singing in the distance, the rustle of small animals in the underbrush, the whisper of wind through pine needles. Her senses felt heightened in a way that was almost overwhelming. Then the pain started. It began as a dull ache in her chest, like homesickness made physical. Maya ignored it and kept walking. The ache intensified, spreading through her ribcage and down into her stomach. By the time she'd gone 100 yards, it felt like someone was slowly tearing her heart out of her chest. She stumbled, gasping, and pressed her hand to her sternum. The pain was unlike anything she'd ever experienced, not sharp like a knife wound, but deep and wrenching, as if something fundamental was being ripped away from her. Maya turned back toward the cabin and immediately felt a wave of relief. The closer she got to the building, the more the pain subsided. By the time she reached the porch, it had faded to a manageable throb. Kai was waiting for her in the doorway, arms crossed over his broad chest. He didn't say, "I told you so," but it was written all over his face. What did you do to me? Maya demanded, her voice shaking with rage and something that felt dangerously close to panic. I marked you as my mate. He stepped aside to let her back into the cabin. It's a sacred bond in our world. Unbreakable. Your world? Maya sank back onto the couch, her mind reeling. What world? What are you talking about? Kai studied her for a long moment, as if deciding how much to tell her. Finally, he sat down across from her again and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. We're werewolves, Maya. Shapeshifters. We've lived alongside humans for thousands of years, hidden in plain sight. His golden eyes never left her face. Last night, you stumbled into one of our sacred ceremonies. A marking ritual. Maya laughed, but it came out sounding slightly hysterical. Werewolves. Right. Of course. Because my life wasn't screwed up enough already. Look at me, Kai said quietly. Really look. Despite herself, Maya found her gaze drawn to his face. As she watched, his eyes began to glow brighter, that golden light intensifying until they looked like molten metal. His canine teeth lengthened, becoming genuine fangs. The ritual scars on his temples and forehead seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Jesus, Maya breathed. The ceremony last night was meant to identify potential mates for unmated pack members. When I touched you, the bond activated. You're mine now, Maya. My other half. My destined mate. Destined according to who? Maya's voice rose with each word. I didn't ask for this. I didn't choose this. I just wanted help, not to be owned by some guy I've never met. Something dark flickered across Kai's expression. You think I chose this? You think I wanted to be bound to a human who knows nothing about our world? He stood abruptly and began pacing the length of the room. I had responsibilities, plans. A pack to lead and protect. The last thing I needed was a mate who can't even survive in the human world, let alone ours. His words hit her like a slap. Then undo it. Take your mark back. I can't. Kai stopped pacing and turned to face her. No one can. What's done is done. There has to be something. The only way to break a mating bond is death. His voice was flat, final. Yours or mine. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. You're telling me I'm stuck with you forever because you decided to brand me like cattle? I'm telling you that you have 7 days to complete the transformation or the mark will kill you. Kai's expression was carved from stone. 7 days to accept what you've become and join the pack, or 7 days to die. Those are your options. The words hit her like a physical blow. Maya found herself struggling to breathe, the walls of the cabin suddenly feeling like they were closing in around her. Transform into what? A werewolf? The mark begins the change, but it needs to be completed through ritual and acceptance. Your human body can't sustain the supernatural bond indefinitely. Either you embrace your new nature, or it tears you apart from the inside. Maya pressed her hands to her face, trying to process what he was telling her. 1 week ago, her biggest problem had been paying rent. Now she was apparently mated to a werewolf and facing death if she didn't become a monster herself. I can't do this, she whispered. I can't be what you want me to be. Then you'll die. Kai's voice held no emotion whatsoever. I'll complete the morning rites and find another mate eventually. The pack will survive. Maya looked up at him in shock. That's it? That's all you have to say? I might die and you'll just move on. Something flickered in those golden eyes, so fast she almost missed it. Pain, maybe, or regret. But when he spoke, his voice remained carefully neutral. I've learned not to get attached to things I can't control. If you choose death over transformation, that's your decision to make. But you'll make sure I can't leave to make that decision anywhere else. Maya gestured toward the door. What happens if I try to drive away? Does the pain get worse? Much worse. By the time you reached the highway, it would probably kill you. Kai moved to the kitchen area and began pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. You're bound to me now, Maya. Geographically, physically, emotionally. The farther you are from me, the more it hurts. Maya watched him work, noting the careful way he avoided looking at her. For someone who claimed not to get attached, he seemed awfully tense. Why me? She asked quietly. Out of all the people at that ceremony, why did you choose me? Kai's hand stilled on the cutting board where he'd been slicing vegetables. I didn't choose you. The bond did. When an alpha touches an unmarked potential mate during a ceremony, the magic decides whether you're compatible. He resumed chopping, but his movements were sharper now, more aggressive. Apparently, we are. Lucky me, Maya muttered. You could look at it that way. Kai glanced over his shoulder at her. Or you could consider that 24 hours ago, you were homeless and starving. Now you have a home, food, protection, and the chance to become something powerful enough that you'll never be vulnerable again. At the cost of my humanity. Your humanity was killing you. Kai's voice turned harsh. Slowly, maybe, but it was killing you just the same. How long were you going to last on the streets, Maya? How many more nights sleeping in your car before someone hurt you? How many more days without food before you collapsed? The truth of his words hit harder than she wanted to admit. Maya had been dying, maybe not in the supernatural sense he meant, but dying nonetheless. Each day had been a struggle just to survive, and she'd been losing that battle. That doesn't give you the right to make choices for me, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. No, Kai agreed. But I did it anyway. He brought her a plate of eggs and toast, setting it on the coffee table in front of her. The smell made her stomach growl loudly, reminding her that she hadn't eaten a real meal in days. Eat, he commanded. You need to keep your strength up. The transformation process is difficult. Maya picked up the fork with shaking hands. The first bite tasted better than anything she could remember eating. As she ate, she became aware of Kai watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. What happens during this transformation? She asked between bites. Pain, mostly. Your body has to restructure itself to accommodate your new nature. Bones lengthening, muscle mass increasing, sensory organs adapting. Kai sat back down across from her. It's different for everyone, but it's never pleasant. And if I don't go through with it? The mark will consume you from the inside. The pain will get worse each day until your heart simply stops. Maya set down her fork, her appetite suddenly gone. Some choice. Life rarely offers us the choices we want, Kai said quietly. Only the choices we get. She studied his face, looking for some crack in that stoic facade. Is this what you wanted? To be mated to someone who hates the idea of being with you? For a moment, something raw and vulnerable flickered across his features. But it was gone so quickly she might have imagined it. What I want doesn't matter. What matters is the survival of the pack, and sometimes that requires sacrifices. He stood and moved toward the window, gazing out at the forest. You're not the only one whose life changed last night, Maya. The difference is, I'm not fighting it. Because you chose this life. No. Because fighting the inevitable is a waste of energy that could be better spent adapting. Maya finished her breakfast in silence, mulling over his words. When she was done, she set the plate aside and looked at him again. He still stood with his back to her, shoulders rigid with tension. How long have you been a werewolf? She asked. I was born this way. 3rd generation alpha. And you've never been mated before? No. His voice was clipped. I've been too focused on pack responsibilities. But now you're stuck with me. Kai turned back to face her, and in his expression she saw something that made her breath catch. Not resignation, exactly, but a kind of grim determination. We're stuck with each other, he corrected. The question is whether we make the best of it or make each other miserable for however long you have left. Maya touched the mark on her forehead, wincing at the renewed surge of pain. The skin felt raised, like a scar, and warm to the touch. She could feel it pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. 6 days, she said quietly. 6 days, Kai confirmed. Maya looked around the cabin that might become her prison or her home, depending on a choice that didn't feel like much of a choice at all. Then she looked back at the man who might become her mate or her executioner, depending on decisions that seemed to be spiraling far beyond her control. I need to understand what I'm choosing between, she said finally. If I'm going to decide whether to die human or live as something else, I need to know what that something else actually means. Kai nodded slowly. Then I'll show you. Chapter 3. The compound sprawled across a hidden valley like a small town carved from the wilderness itself. Maya pressed her face to the passenger window of Kai's black pickup truck as they descended the winding mountain road, taking in the sight of log buildings connected by stone pathways, gardens that looked both wild and carefully tended, and people, dozens of them, moving between the structures with purpose. How many? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. 43 pack members currently in residence, Kai replied, his hands steady on the steering wheel. More during the full moon gatherings. As they drove through what appeared to be the main street, Maya caught glimpses of everyday life that seemed surreal given what she now knew about these people. Children played in a central courtyard while women hung laundry on lines strung between cabins. Men worked on truck engines and chopped firewood. It looked like any small mountain community, except for the way everyone stopped what they were doing to watch Kai's truck pass. And the way their eyes reflected the afternoon sunlight with that same golden glow. "They're staring," Maya said, sinking lower in her seat. "You're new. And you're unmarked." Kai pulled up in front of a large building that looked like a cross between a lodge and a town hall. "They're curious. Unmarked? You haven't been formally accepted into the pack yet. Until you complete the transformation, you're essentially a guest. An outsider." Maya touched the crescent moon mark on her forehead, which had been throbbing steadily since they'd left his cabin. "But I have your mark. That binds you to me, not to them." Kai shut off the engine and turned to face her. "Maya, I need you to understand something before we go in there. Pack politics can be complicated. There are things you're going to hear, things people will say about why I marked you. Don't let them get to you." Something cold settled in Maya's stomach. "What kind of things?" "Just remember that I'm the alpha. What I do for the good of the pack." Kai's golden eyes searched her face. "Sometimes that means making difficult choices." Before Maya could ask what he meant, her door opened. A man stood there, tall, broad-shouldered, with sandy brown hair and the kind of easy smile that probably made women swoon. But his eyes held the same predatory intelligence she'd seen in Kai's. Well, he said, offering Maya his hand. "The infamous Maya Chen. I'm Marcus Reed, Kai's beta and the closest thing he has to a best friend, though don't tell him I said that." Maya took his hand, surprised by the warmth of his grip. Infamous? News travels fast in a small community. Marcus helped her down from the truck, and she caught that same wild scent that seemed to surround all of them. Especially news about our alpha finally taking a mate. "Marcus." Kai's voice held a warning. "What?" "I'm being welcoming." Marcus grinned, but Maya noticed it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Come on, let's get you introduced to everyone before the gossip mill spins completely out of control." The interior of the lodge was impressive. Soaring ceiling supported by massive timber beams, a stone fireplace large enough to roast a whole deer, and comfortable furniture arranged in conversational clusters. Pack members occupied most of the seating, and conversations died as they entered. Maya felt every eye in the room settle on her with uncomfortable intensity. She stayed close to Kai, acutely aware of her own humanity in a room full of predators. "Everyone," Kai's voice carried easily through the space, commanding attention. "This is Maya Chen, my marked mate. She'll be undergoing transformation over the next 6 days." A murmur ran through the crowd. Maya caught fragments of whispered conversations, "Finally," and "about time," and something that sounded like desperate measures. "Sarah, would you show Maya around the compound?" Kai asked a middle-aged woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes. "I need to speak with the council." "Of course, Alpha." Sarah rose from her seat and approached them with a gentle smile. "Maya, dear, let's get you oriented." As Sarah led her away, Maya heard Marcus speak quietly to Kai, "The council's been waiting. They have questions about your timing." Maya's step faltered, but Sarah's gentle touch on her arm kept her moving. They exited through a side door onto a covered walkway that connected the lodge to other buildings. "Don't mind them," Sarah said softly. "Pack members love their drama, especially when it involves the alpha. They mean well, mostly." "Mostly?" Sarah stopped walking and turned to face her. "Maya, can I speak plainly?" Maya nodded, though something in the woman's expression made her nervous. Kai is a good man and a strong leader, but he's been under enormous pressure to take a mate. An unmated alpha past the age of 30 starts to lose credibility with other packs. It makes him vulnerable to challenges. Challenges? Other alphas who want his territory. His pack. Sarah resumed walking, leading Maya past a series of smaller cabins. 3 years ago, Kai tried to mate before. Her name was Luna Martinez, and she was, well, she was perfect for him. Strong, beautiful, from a powerful werewolf bloodline. Everyone expected them to have a dozen cubs and rule the northern pack for decades. Maya's chest tightened. What happened to her? She died during the transformation ritual. Sarah's voice grew quiet. Kai's alpha power was too strong. Instead of guiding her through the change, it overwhelmed her system. She shifted partially and then, her heart just stopped. Maya stopped walking entirely. He killed his mate? It was an accident. But Kai blamed himself. He withdrew from pack life, refused all suggestions of finding another mate. Until last week. Sarah gave her a meaningful look. When he suddenly announced he was attending a marking ceremony. The implication hit Maya like a physical blow. He went there looking for someone. He went there because the pack council gave him an ultimatum. Find a mate within the month or step down as alpha. Sarah's expression was sympathetic but honest. Maya, I'm not saying this to hurt you. But you deserve to know the truth about why you're here. Maya felt sick. Everything Kai had said about the bond choosing them, about destiny, all lies. She'd been selected not because she was special, but because she was convenient. Desperate enough to be manipulated. The ceremony, she said slowly. He knew I'd be there. The pack has connections. People who keep track of humans in desperate situations. Sometimes we find potential candidates, people who might be open to our world if approached correctly. Sarah touched Maya's arm gently. I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. Maya pulled away, her mind reeling. I need to see him. I need to talk to Kai. The council meeting could last hours. Why don't I show you the rest of the... No. Maya's voice came out sharper than she intended. I need to be alone. Please. Sarah studied her face, then nodded. Your cabin is number 7, just down this path. There's food in the refrigerator and fresh clothes in the closet. If you need anything. Maya was already walking away, her vision blurred with tears of rage and betrayal. Behind her, she heard Sarah sigh. Cabin 7 was small but comfortable, with a single room containing a bed, a kitchenette, and a bathroom. Maya sat heavily on the edge of the bed and buried her face in her hands. Everything made sense now, Kai's coldness, his talk about duty and sacrifice, the way he'd treated their bond like an obligation rather than a gift. She'd been played. Manipulated by someone who saw her as nothing more than a solution to his political problems. The mark on her forehead pulsed painfully, as if responding to her emotional turmoil. Maya touched it and gasped as a wave of sensation washed over her. For a moment, she could have sworn she felt Kai's presence, his frustration, his anger, something that felt almost like guilt. She jerked her hand away from the mark. That was impossible. She was imagining things because she was upset. But the feeling lingered, a strange awareness at the edge of her consciousness. Like someone standing just outside her field of vision. Maya stood and began pacing the small cabin, trying to process everything Sarah had told her. Outside, she could hear the sounds of pack life continuing, children laughing, adults calling to each other, the distant sound of hammering as someone worked on construction. Normal life. Which she would never have again, whether she transformed or died. A knock at her door interrupted her brooding. Maya opened it to find Marcus standing on her small porch, holding a steaming mug. Sarah said you might need this. He held out the mug. It's tea with honey. Good for the nerves. Maya accepted it gratefully, inhaling the soothing scent. Thank you. Can I come in? There are some things you should know before Kai gets back. Maya stepped aside to let him enter. Marcus was less intimidating than Kai, but she could sense the same controlled power in him. He sat in the room's single chair and gestured for her to take the bed. "Sarah told you about Luna," he said without preamble. "She told me I'm here because Kai needed a political solution, not a mate." "That's partially true." Marcus ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I've known Kai since we were kids. He's the most honorable man I know, but he's also pragmatic to a fault. When the council pressured him to find a mate, he approached it like a military operation." "How comforting. But Maya, here's what Sarah didn't tell you because she doesn't know." Marcus leaned forward, his expression serious. "The marking ceremonies aren't random. They're blood magic, ancient stuff that responds to genetic compatibility. Kai couldn't have marked just anyone. The ritual would have rejected an incompatible mate." Maya frowned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that whatever drew him to you wasn't entirely political. There's something in your bloodline, something that made the bond possible." Marcus studied her face. "Have you ever experienced anything unusual? Dreams, instincts, abilities you couldn't explain?" Maya thought about the strange awareness she'd felt when touching her mark, the way her senses had seemed heightened since waking up in Kai's cabin. "Maybe. I'm not sure. The transformation isn't just about becoming a werewolf. It's about awakening what was already inside you. And based on what I've observed in the last 24 hours, you're not entirely human to begin with." "That's impossible. I know my family history. I'm completely normal." Marcus smiled. "Maya, normal humans don't survive alpha marking. The power would kill them instantly. But you're not just surviving, you're adapting. Faster than anyone expected." As if summoned by his words, Maya felt a strange tingling sensation run through her body. Her vision sharpened suddenly, and she could see details in Marcus's face that had been invisible moments before, the faint scars along his jawline, the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, the way his pulse beat in his throat. "What's happening to me?" she whispered. "Partial shift. Your senses are enhancing." Marcus's voice was calm, reassuring. "It's normal, but usually doesn't happen until the 3rd or 4th day. You're ahead of schedule." Maya blinked, and her vision returned to normal. But the heightened awareness remained, as if she'd unlocked a new level of perception. "There's something else," Marcus said. "Something the council doesn't know yet, and something Kai needs to understand. Your reaction to the marking, the speed of your adaptation. It suggests you have lunar bloodline." "Lunar?" "The first werewolves. The original families that received the gift directly from the moon goddess herself. That bloodline was thought to be extinct." Maya stared at him. "You think I'm descended from, what, ancient werewolves?" "I think your great-grandmother or great-great-grandmother was probably a werewolf who chose to live as human. It happens sometimes, usually to escape pack politics or territorial wars. They suppress their nature, marry humans, raise their children as human." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "But the bloodline doesn't disappear. It just goes dormant. Until someone like Kai comes along and wakes it up." "Exactly." Maya felt overwhelmed. In the space of 24 hours, she'd learned she was mated to a werewolf, marked for transformation, and now possibly descended from mythical moon-touched ancestors. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because you deserve to know the truth. All of it." Marcus stood. "And because Kai needs to know what he's dealing with. If you really do have lunar bloodline, your transformation won't be like anyone else's. You could be incredibly powerful, more powerful than any Luna who came before you. Or you could die in spectacular fashion when your body can't handle the awakening." Marcus's expression was grim. Lunar bloodline transformations are legendary for their intensity. There's a reason most of those families chose to go dormant. Maya set down her tea mug with shaking hands. "So I'm either going to become some kind of super werewolf or explode. Those are the extremes, yes." Marcus moved toward the door. "But Maya, there's one more thing you need to know. If you really are lunar bloodline, then your mate bond with Kai isn't just about politics or convenience. Lunar descendants can only bond with true alpha bloodlines. The magic won't allow anything else. He paused with his hand on the doorknob. Which means, whatever Kai's original motives were, the bond between you is real. As real as anything can be in our world. After he left, Maya sat in the quiet cabin, trying to process everything she'd learned. Outside, the sounds of pack life continued, but she felt disconnected from it all, caught between two worlds and not fully belonging to either. She touched her mark again and immediately felt that strange awareness, Kai's presence, closer now. He was coming back from his council meeting, and she could sense his tension, his frustration, something that felt like dread. Maya stood and looked out her window toward the main lodge. In a few minutes, he would come looking for her, and she would have to confront him about his deception. About Luna, about the political pressures, about the fact that she'd been chosen not for who she was but for how desperate she'd been. But underneath her anger was something else, curiosity about this lunar bloodline Marcus had mentioned. If it was true, if she really was descended from the original werewolves, then maybe she wasn't as powerless as she'd always believed. Maybe, for once in her life, she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Even if she'd been manipulated into getting there. Chapter 4. Maya didn't have to wait long for Kai's return. She felt him approaching before she heard his footsteps on the cabin's wooden porch, that strange awareness that seemed to pull stronger with each passing hour. By the time he knocked, she was already standing by the door, steeling herself for the confrontation to come. Maya. Kai's voice was carefully controlled as she opened the door. We need to talk. Yes, we do. She stepped aside to let him enter, noting the tension in his shoulders, the way his golden eyes seemed more restless than usual. I've learned some interesting things about my situation. Kai moved to the center of the small room and turned to face her. In the confined space, he seemed even more overwhelming, all controlled power and barely leashed intensity. What did Sarah tell you? The truth. Something you apparently have trouble with. Maya crossed her arms, using anger to mask the hurt that threatened to choke her. Luna. The council's ultimatum. The fact that I was chosen because I was desperate enough to be manipulated. Something flickered across Kai's face, pain, maybe, or regret. But his voice remained steady. It's more complicated than that. Is it? Because it seems pretty straightforward to me. You needed a mate to maintain your political position, I needed help, and you saw an opportunity to kill two birds with one stone. Maya felt the mark on her forehead pulse, sending a wave of heat through her skull. Tell me something, Kai, would you have even looked at me if I'd been happy and stable? Maya. Answer the question. Kai was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on something beyond her shoulder. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. No. Probably not. The admission hit harder than she'd expected. Maya had known the answer, but hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way that left her breathless. So everything you said about the bond, about destiny, that was all lies. The bond is real. Kai's eyes snapped back to hers, blazing with intensity. Whatever my original motives were, what's between us now isn't politics. It's... A howl echoed across the compound, long and mournful and definitely not human. Kai's entire body went rigid, his nostrils flaring as he scented the air. Get behind me, he ordered, moving toward the window. What? Now, Maya. The authority in his voice was absolute, and despite her anger, Maya found herself obeying. She pressed herself against the wall behind him as he peered through the curtains. Damon, Kai growled, and the sound was more animal than human. Outside, Maya could hear voices raised in alarm, the sound of running feet, children crying as they were hurried indoors. The peaceful afternoon atmosphere of the compound had shattered in an instant. Who's Damon? Maya asked. Alpha of the Eastern Pack. And the last person who should be on my territory. Kai's hand moved to his hip, where Maya noticed for the first time that he carried a knife in a leather sheath. Stay here. Lock the door behind me and don't come out until I tell you it's safe. Kai. But he was already gone, the door slamming shut behind him. Maya heard the click of the lock engaging automatically, then the sound of his footsteps moving away at a run. Maya rushed to the window, pushing the curtains aside to see what was happening. The compound's central courtyard was in chaos. Pack members were forming defensive positions around the buildings while others herded children to safety. In the center of it all stood a man Maya had never seen before. He was tall and lean where Kai was broad, with silver-streaked dark hair and pale eyes that seemed to glow even in the afternoon sunlight. He wore expensive clothes, a tailored black coat over dark jeans and boots that probably cost more than Maya's car. Everything about him screamed wealth and power, but there was something cold in his bearing that made her skin crawl. Damon Redclaw, she realized. And he was looking directly at her cabin. Maya stepped back from the window, her heart hammering. Through the glass, she could see Kai approaching the stranger, his posture radiating controlled aggression. Marcus flanked him, along with several other pack members Maya didn't recognize. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she didn't need to. The body language was clear enough. This was a confrontation that had been building for a long time. Then Damon turned and spoke directly to her window, his voice carrying clearly across the compound despite the distance. Maya Chen, descendant of Elena Moonshadow, last oracle of the Western Territories. His accent was crisp, educated, with just a hint of something foreign, European, maybe. I've come a very long way to meet you. Maya's blood turned to ice. Elena Moonshadow. She'd never heard that name before, but something deep inside her recognized it. The mark on her forehead flared with sudden heat, and for a moment the world shifted around her. Images flashed through her mind, a woman with silver hair standing beneath a full moon, hands raised to the sky, power flowing around her like liquid starlight. I know you can hear me, Damon continued, his pale eyes never leaving her window. Your bloodline calls to mine. The Oracle and the High Alpha, united as our ancestors intended. Kai stepped between Damon and the cabin, his voice carrying clearly in the still air. She's marked, Damon. The bond is sealed. Sealed by deception. Damon's smile was sharp as a blade. Did you tell her why you really chose her, old friend? Did you explain that you've been tracking her bloodline for months, waiting for the perfect moment to strike? Maya felt the breath leave her lungs. Kai had been tracking her. Or perhaps you told her about the prophecy, Damon continued conversationally. The one that says the Oracle's heir will either save or destroy the werewolf world, depending on which alpha claims her. Shut up. Kai's voice was deadly quiet. Ah, but she deserves to know, doesn't she? After all, it's her destiny we're discussing. Damon raised his voice again. Maya, my dear, did Kai mention that your great-great-grandmother was Elena Moonshadow, the most powerful oracle in werewolf history? That she could control the phases of the moon itself, predict the rise and fall of entire packs? The images in Maya's head intensified. She saw the silver-haired woman, Elena, standing in a circle of stones, her hands weaving patterns in the air as the moon responded to her call. She saw pack wars fought and won based on Elena's visions, saw territories carved and redrawn according to her prophecies. And she saw Elena fleeing into the human world, pregnant and alone, choosing love over power. Maya pressed her hands to her temples, trying to stop the flood of inherited memories. But they kept coming, generations of women who had suppressed their gifts, married human men, raised human children, all to escape the burden of their bloodline. Until now. The Oracle bloodline has been dormant for nearly a century, Damon said, his voice taking on an almost hypnotic quality. But it can be awakened. By the right alpha. With the right ritual. She's mine. Kai's words were a growl of pure possession. Yours by trickery and manipulation. I had a prior claim. Damon's pale eyes glittered with malice. After all, I'm the one who arranged for her to be at that ceremony. Maya's world tilted. The flyer. The mysterious ceremony she'd stumbled upon in her darkest hour. It hadn't been coincidence at all. You planted the flyer, Kai said, understanding dawning in his voice. Of course I did. I've been tracking Maya's movements for months, waiting for her to reach the proper level of desperation. Humans are so much more malleable when they're broken. Damon's smile was predatory. I planted the flyer on her car at precisely the right moment. I organized the ceremony. I even suggested the location. Then why didn't you mark her yourself? Marcus called out. Because I wanted to see what you would do. Would the noble Kai Blackwood stoop to claiming a mate through deception? Would he prioritize his pack's survival over his precious honor? Damon laughed, a sound like breaking glass. The answer, it turns out, is yes. How wonderfully human of you. Maya watched through the window as Kai's hands clenched into fists. She could feel his rage through their bond, a burning fury that made her own anger seem pale by comparison. What do you want, Damon? What's rightfully mine? The girl. The bloodline. The power that comes with both. Damon began walking toward the cabin, and Maya saw pack members tense, weapons appearing in hands that had been empty moments before. I'm prepared to offer her a choice you never gave her. No choices, Kai snarled. She's marked. She's mine. Marked by deception can be unmarked by truth. It's ancient law, Kai. Even you can't argue with that. Damon stopped just outside the defensive circle of Northern Pack members. Maya, can you hear me? Against every instinct that screamed at her to hide, Maya found herself opening the cabin door. She stepped onto the small porch, acutely aware that every eye in the compound was now focused on her. I can hear you, she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Damon's pale eyes lit up as he took her in. Maya felt exposed under that gaze, as if he could see straight through to her soul. When he smiled, she caught a glimpse of fangs that were longer and sharper than Kai's. Beautiful, he murmured. And so much more powerful than you realize. I can smell the oracle magic in your blood, child. It's been sleeping, but it's there. Waiting. What do you want from me? I want to offer you what Kai never did. A real choice. Damon's voice was smooth as silk, persuasive in a way that made Maya's skin crawl. I can break his mark, replace it with my own. The transformation will be intense, but you'll emerge with abilities beyond anything you've imagined. Control over lunar magic, prophetic sight, power over the elements themselves. And then? Then you're free to choose your own path. Stay with me, leave, do whatever you wish. I won't chain you to my side like Kai has. Damon's smile was all sharp edges. All I ask is that you consider the possibilities. Maya looked at Kai, seeing the fury and something that looked like fear in his golden eyes. Then she looked back at Damon, with his cold smile and predatory grace. You said ancient law. What does that mean, exactly? It means that a mark obtained through deception can be challenged and transferred. The process is unpleasant for the original marker, but entirely legal by pack law. Damon's pale eyes gleamed. All you have to do is consent. Maya, don't listen to him, Kai called out. He's not telling you everything. The transfer process could kill you, yes, Damon interrupted smoothly. There are risks. But far less risk than staying with an alpha who's already killed one mate through incompetence. Maya felt Kai flinch through their bond. She saw the pain that flashed across his face, the way his shoulders bowed under the weight of old guilt. That was an accident, Marcus snarled. Was it? Or was it the inevitable result of an alpha who can't control his own power? Damon's voice turned mocking. Tell me, Kai, have you been having nightmares about history repeating itself? About watching another mate die because you're too strong for your own good? Enough. Kai stepped forward, and Maya could see the shift beginning in his features, eyes blazing brighter, canines lengthening, muscles coiling with inhuman strength. Oh, good. I was hoping you'd make this easy. Damon shrugged out of his expensive coat, revealing a lean, powerful frame covered in ritual scars that made Kai's markings look simple by comparison. It's been too long since we've settled our differences properly. No. Maya found herself speaking before she'd consciously decided to. Both alphas turned to look at her, along with every other person in the compound. I won't be the excuse for you two to tear each other apart. Maya, Kai started. You both lied to me. You both manipulated me. You both treated me like a prize to be won rather than a person with her own will. Maya's voice grew stronger with each word. I don't know what this oracle bloodline means, and I don't know if I want to find out. But I do know that I'm tired of being a pawn in other people's games. Damon's expression shifted, becoming something almost like respect. Spoken like a true oracle. Your great-great-grandmother would be proud. Don't, Maya said sharply. Don't try to manipulate me with family history and bloodline destiny. I've had enough of that for one lifetime. Then what do you want? Kai asked quietly. Maya looked between the two alphas, one who had saved her from starvation and homelessness but lied about his motives, and one who offered her power and freedom but radiated the kind of coldness that suggested his promises came with hidden prices. I want time to think. Without pressure from either of you. Unfortunately, that's not an option, Damon said, his voice losing its silky persuasiveness. The new moon rises in 3 days. After that, the window for mark transfer closes permanently. You'll be bound to Kai forever, oracle bloodline or not. 3 days, Maya repeated. 3 days, Damon confirmed. And Maya? If you choose to stay with him, if you waste your potential on an alpha who sees you as nothing more than a political necessity, well, let's just say I have other ways of claiming what should be mine. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Maya felt Kai's rage spike through their bond, saw him take another step forward. Is that a challenge? Kai's voice was barely recognizable. It's a promise. Damon's pale eyes flashed. The oracle bloodline belongs with the Eastern Pack. It always has. Your deception doesn't change centuries of tradition. That's when Kai snapped. He moved faster than Maya's eyes could follow, crossing the distance between himself and Damon in a blur of motion. His first punch caught the Eastern Alpha in the jaw, sending him staggering backward. But Damon recovered quickly, his own transformation beginning as he launched himself at Kai. What followed was barely human. The two alphas collided in a tangle of claws and fangs, their bodies shifting and changing even as they fought. Maya caught glimpses of lengthened limbs, inhuman strength, the flash of teeth that could tear through steel. They rolled across the compound's central courtyard, destroying everything in their path. Pack members scattered, shouting warnings and forming protective circles around the non-combatants. Maya found herself pressed against her cabin's wall, heart hammering as she watched the two most powerful men she'd ever met try to tear each other apart. For her, the fight seemed to go on forever, though it probably lasted only minutes. Both alphas were bleeding, their expensive clothes torn to shreds. Kai had claw marks across his chest, while Damon sported a split lip and what looked like a dislocated shoulder. It ended when Damon managed to rake his claws across Kai's throat, not deep enough to kill, but deep enough to send blood streaming down his chest. Kai stumbled, and for a moment Maya thought Damon would press his advantage. Instead, the Eastern Alpha stepped back, his pale eyes fixed on Maya. 3 days, he said, his voice hoarse from exertion. Think carefully, Oracle. Your choice will echo through eternity. He shifted then, not fully, but enough that Maya saw the huge silver wolf that lived beneath his human skin. With a sound that was half howl, half laugh, Damon Redclaw disappeared into the forest. Maya rushed to Kai's side, her hands fluttering over his wounds. The cuts were already healing, faster than should have been possible, but she could feel his pain through their bond. Are you okay? She asked. Kai looked up at her, his golden eyes still blazing with residual fury. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, and his breathing was labored. He'll be back, he said quietly. In 3 days, when the new moon rises. And next time, he won't be alone. Maya pressed her hand to the mark on her forehead, feeling the pulse of power that seemed to grow stronger with each passing hour. Oracle bloodline. Moon magic. The ability to predict the rise and fall of packs. 3 days to decide between the alpha who had lied to her and the one who promised her power at an unknown price. 3 days to discover what it meant to be the last descendant of Elena Moonshadow. 3 days to figure out if she was strong enough to survive what was coming, no matter what she chose. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like and share this video to be the first to get notified when the part 2 of this story drops.